Hey, how are you?
I'm good. So nice to talk with you.
Thanks,
Okay,
Kelly. I feel really honored to be here talking to you today.
I'll give a little background. So Cassandra had written in and shared an email with us just telling us her story about her husband's health and health journey and just how Branch Basics has played a role in reducing the toxicity in your home and for your
Yeah,
health and all that stuff. So thank you so much for writing us. I mean, just hearing from real life customers, like real life stories of how we're making an impact is so motivating and encouraging for us. So I really appreciate it.
yeah, absolutely. I love your products and I've been using them for several years now. And as much as I love your products, the education that you guys put out and your podcasts on your blogs are just as useful as the cleaning products that you're supplying to the public. It's been really, huge education for me.
I'm so glad to hear that. Okay, so yeah, tell me, like, I'm so curious. Like, well, one, I'm curious how you came across Branch Basics, and two, like, just start from the beginning. Like, did you grow up kind of like conventional household, or was all this on your radar? All the Branch
Yeah,
Basics.
100%. Cliff and I both grew up, my husband Cliff and I both grew up in conventional households, conventional cleaners, boxed food, fast food. We were both pretty healthy growing up. We weren't sickly kids. Our families weren't sick,
Right.
but generally very conventional, which wasn't the norm, or was the norm. Sorry, that was the norm for where we lived. None of my friends had a different experience. We all lived like
Yeah,
that.
that's how I was.
hmm and then I would say probably my husband became a fireman when he was 19 years old. So he's been a fireman for over 20 years.
Oh, wow.
And when we got married, he was at one fire department. And 10 years later, or 10 years into being a fireman, he switched fire departments and moved to the Fort Worth Fire Department. And it was about that time that that we took a pay cut while he went back through the Fort Worth Fire Academy. And so out of necessity, financial necessity, I started kind of pulling things in and going, what can I make at home? What can I, cooking more from scratch, making some cleaning products myself or making some personal care products myself out of a financial necessity. And I feel like in the health and wellness field and sustainability field, in the financial field, all of that kind of comes together and partners really well with each other. So even though it started out as a financial thing, it quickly moved into a sustainability thing, and then it moved into a health and wellness thing. And I just started learning more and more the more we got into it. And so I came across Branch Basics while listening to another podcast for Live Simply about cooking real food. And you guys were on that podcast, and that's how I learned about your company.
And when was that? How long?
That was probably 4 years ago.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
amazing. So then was for you, what did you kind of like slowly start transitioning like the products around your home and things like that, or was
Yeah,
it like
it
all
has been a long, slow process, which I sort of love because it's been very sustainable. It hasn't been anything so drastic that I was like, I'm out, I can't do it. Moving and really food has been the longest, hardest thing because I feel like that's been the thing that's most ingrained in maybe people that, food, how you grew up and the foods that you ate growing up and all of that, I just feel like it's harder to break.
it is. And on top of that, just like, yeah, like on top of habits of like what you're used to and like used to buying, used to cooking, it's also like you're fighting your body's like cravings, whereas like with your cleaning products or your shampoo, it's not, well, shampoo, I don't know. Some people maybe kind of like cling
Yeah.
to that because of their hair, but food is definitely harder. And you have to eat multiple times a day. It's like,
Oh my gosh.
you have to
It
think of
never ends. It
every.
never ends. Yeah, exactly. So when we started, I really was doing a lot of cleaning products, trying to make my own all purposes and make my own laundry detergent, things like that. We have 3 kids. Our youngest now is 10. We have a 12-year-old boy and a 13-year-old girl. So this started when they were small. And I think, of course, whenever you start having kids, you become more aware and more conscious of what you're using in your house naturally, I think. But yeah, making my own cleaning products and toiletries, trying to make face wash, trying to simplify things a little bit. And that's kind of where it all began. So all of these things have started, I mean, it's been an 8-year process of trying to implement change. So I
Okay.
think that's been beneficial for us. It's worked in our favor because it's been sustainable.
Yeah. And so then tell us about your husband's health experience, because I'm not sure when that first diagnosis came.
It's very recent, actually, but the awareness around cancer in the fire department, I don't know if you are aware or if your listeners are aware, cancer is the leading cause of death in firefighters. So they have about a 9% higher risk of getting a cancer diagnosis than the general public, and they have a 14% higher basically death rate, cause of death from cancer than the general public. So that revolves around, it's multifaceted, really. If you think about how our homes are built now, newer homes are built more out of synthetic construction products.
Yeah.
Our furniture is more synthetic. And so all of that also combusts faster. So houses burn at a higher rate than they used to 30 years ago. If you were in a burning house 30 years ago, you had about 17 minutes to get out of a house fire because of the rate that the components of the house burned. And now you have about 3 minutes.
What? Wow.
3 minutes is about the time that if your family were in the house and it were on fire, you have about 3 minutes to get out because of the rate that modern furniture and construction materials burn.
Which is so interesting considering that now all the furniture and things most commonly add flame retardants, which you would think are for the purpose of not catching on fire as quickly and giving yourself more time. So not only are we getting the toxicity exposure from the flame retardants, it's not even actually increasing the time you have. Yeah. To get away from the fire. Interesting.
Yeah.
I did not know that. I mean, man, you're just making me realize how much even more noble of a job firefighters are like. That's just amazing. I mean, knowing that they have these increased risks, knowing that the time to get out of a house safely is so much shorter. I'm just blown away. I'm so thankful for your husband and all the other folks.
And that's the thing too, they have such a high toxicity exposure, but it isn't a field where you can say, well, I guess you could, if you wanted to make that sort of a life change, to say, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to not be a fireman anymore. We need firefighters. And firefighters love their job. They love their job. There's a sense of adventure and probably craziness about them. They love their job. And but even the culture inside the fire department is shifting as all of this new information comes out about, cancer in the fire service and, the changes in what our home materials are made out of, and even their gear, everything, so their gear. So let's just start there. We'll talk about that a little bit. As they go into fires, everything that's in a fire is carcinogenic, of course. So fire in and of itself, even a cotton wick on a candle puts out carcinogens. So, but what is in the home burning is so highly toxic, it seeps into their fire gear. And you can imagine when you're in a house fire that's burning that hot, how much you sweat, how vulnerable you are in that moment for things to get into your body. And their fire gear absorbs all of that. You're carrying around, 40 to 50 pounds of gear. You're putting out everything you have physically. You're pushing your body to its limit, and it's vulnerable in that moment. So they leave the fire, their gear absorbs all of that formaldehyde and carcinogens. and they have to wear that gear on every single call that they go to. So it sits against their skin, sits on their body. And it's very expensive to get extractors inside the fire department for gear that help clean their gear. So fire departments usually only have one set, depending on the city,
And
of extractors to clean it.
that's something that extracts all the chemical residues from
Correct.
the materials on
Yeah.
the streets.
I don't know if I would say all of it, but
Right.
a helpful amount. Yeah. And there are 2,000 firefighters in the city of Fort Worth, and you can't have them in every station. It would just cost billions of dollars, I'm sure, to get that kind of cleaning gear.
Right.
So
Right. So they're exposed from their gear even when they're not in a fire.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Then how often typically uh, is your husband exposed to like an active fire?
It depends on the station. So certain parts of the city and certain stations are known to be high firefighting stations. And you know that you're going to get multiple fires a day. But you never, and they're kind of come in waves too. So depending on the time of year, you'll have more fires, than you would other times of the year. And so, I would say it's pretty consistent. And my husband's also at a rescue station. So he's downtown Fort Worth at Station 2. And what he does is, anything that's a chemical spill, he's on call for that. Anything, if they have to do high-rise rescues or there was some sort of a disaster, 9/11 scenario where there's mass destruction, they go in and they, pardon me, they rescue and pull apart rubble. So do you remember a few years ago when they had that massive pileup in Fort Worth during that winter freeze? It was
Oh,
like a car. His station was on call for that for about 14 hours,
wow.
pulling apart cars and extracting people. So there's just a lot of exposure there in addition to firefighting. But
Right. Right. Okay. So your husband has been diagnosed with cancer. Is that right?
yeah, so whenever we started to kind of realize the higher risk for firefighters getting cancer, it started to shift the culture inside the fire department a little bit. It used to be the dirtier your gear, the better, right? Because you had grit. It's a whole thing, right? You don't want clean gear because that means you're not getting in there and getting it done.
Right.
Um, as we've started to find out more about how prevalent cancer is in the fire service, they have become more aware and they're trying to be safer and clean their gear. Well, that shifted in our home too. Even though we were already in this process of tossing toxins before officially tossing toxins, we were on that path anyway. I decided, he has such a high exposure rate at work every single day. So when he comes home, I would like for this to be a space where he can kind of detox faster and it be a safer place for him because he's getting so much exposure at work. And so that's when I really started buckling down and getting stuff out of the house, synthetic candles, fragrances. That's the easiest thing. Just look for the fragrance and just get it out.
Yeah.
And that's really where we buckled down.
Yeah.
And I wrote in my email, I think he got diagnosed with cancer in technically March. So what the fire department in Fort Worth is doing, they are really trying to get ahead of the curve on cancer in the fire department. So they started implementing body scans at their annual physical. And this is the first year that they've done it. And they found cancer. They found Cliff's cancer this year in the very first scan that they did.
Wow.
So we're so grateful.
Yeah, that was early.
Yeah, really early. And it was testicular cancer. And so the tumor was pretty large. They thought it had been there for a while, but we're grateful that it was a type of cancer called seminoma, which is a slow growing cancer. So even though the mass was a little bit big, it hadn't spread to anywhere else in his body or in his lymph nodes or anything. So they were able to get it with just surgery. And no chemo, no radiation at this point. So they're going to continue to watch that, do scans every 4 months and do blood work every 2 months just to keep an eye on it because there's a 30% chance of recurrence in the first 2 years with this kind of cancer. And I
Mhm.
think I've wondered before, there was that little moment where I was like, that was a lot of work on my end to make a transformation in our house to create a safe space for him. Was it worth it? And I really feel like 100% it was absolutely worth it. Even though he still got a cancer diagnosis, I really do think that it could have been worse if we hadn't been in the process of getting all of this out.
Yeah. I'm so glad that you came to that conclusion because I wholeheartedly believe that to be true as well. And I think, some people clear toxins more efficiently than others. That's why we all don't react the same when we're exposed to certain things. Um, and so by reducing the overall toxic load and toxic body burden, no doubt you are helping him, and that's helping his body, not have a bigger or worse, um, attack against it. So
Mhm.
and that his body's able to help fight the cancer and it not spread.
Yeah.
So I'm so thankful for all the changes that you've made over the years. And I mean, I assume that is he is he of the same mindset and viewing it with the same perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say whenever I started this 8 to 10 years ago, in some ways he was on board, and in some ways he was like, well, just
Right.
use gain. Well, you probably, I don't know if I should say brand name, but just use conventional detergent.
Right.
Because we live in the country and we're outdoors people. We love to be outside. My boys constantly tromp through the woods and look for snakes, and
Love
they
it.
get sweaty and they get dirty every day. And so when I first started this, it was hard to get the dirt and the smell out of their clothes because they get dirty. And so it took a little while for him to jump on board, because you just want the things that you feel like are going to work, and
Right.
that it smells better because it smells
Mhm.
like fragrance.
Yeah.
Um,
Like
but it just takes
everything.
time, and it takes an intentionality and remembering what your value system is, to be patient and wait for the thing that works, and finding it. And branch basics was a huge part of that for me, to wait and find the thing that worked and that wasn't overwhelming. And the fact that it's a concentrate, and I love simplicity, just to have one thing to do everything is helpful.
I'm so glad. I mean, yeah, it's funny because when we started, I mean, really, we started like the very beginnings of the company in 2009, 2010. And even then there was still so much resistance to the fact of like, wait, the same thing I clean my clothes with is the same thing I spray on my toilet and the same thing I spray on my kitchen counters. Like mentally it was really hard for people to get there. But I feel like
Yeah.
I think I probably as the sustainability message has grown, people are more comfortable with like a concentrate model. And now, especially with like the also the message of like minimizing and simplifying, um I think people are starting to realize, yeah, it's like it's all like every different cleaning product you buy is pretty much all just different surfactants and cleaning agents, and
Yeah.
we don't have to have so many different things and complicate it. So
Yes.
I
It
love
is excellent marketing on their end, to make us think and feel like we have to have a separate product for everything.
absolutely, yeah. Well, okay, so how's your husband feeling?
He's doing really well. You know, it's so multifaceted, a cancer diagnosis. You're dealing with, physical things and emotional things and mental things. But I feel like he's carried it pretty well. He's still not back at work yet, just because of the nature of his job. After having surgery to have the tumor removed, there was a 4-week recovery period, that he couldn't lift anything over 10 pounds. Um, and so now that he's past that, he's just getting it's amazing being inactive for just 4 weeks how much you can lose physically. So
Right.
he's working on getting that back. But
Hmm.
I would say a lot of the recovery too is just the amount of rest. We've been really intentional about slowing our pace, which I
Yeah.
think is always a value for us anyway.
Right. Right.
But my husband is he's a go-getter. He likes to stay active and he loves a project. He doesn't like to feel like he's sitting idle. So before he even had a cancer diagnosis, um, God had already started kind of working in us to slow our pace anyway and to pull back in certain areas. We've got 3 kids, we homeschool, that keeps us busy enough. And we were really, really, really involved in our church and leadership at our church, and we felt like God said, "Hey, let's take a step back, um,
Mm.
take some rest." It wasn't easy, or it wasn't hard to hear Him say that, and it wasn't hard to obey Him in saying that. Usually, what's hard is dealing with people's expectations about your decisions.
Yeah.
And so we had already kind of started a process of creating boundaries and space and rest before we even got a cancer diagnosis. And so when he received a cancer diagnosis, we're like, oh man, I feel like it felt really good to
Right.
already be set up in a position to rest and to recover. So having that space to get better sleep, to go slower, to focus on relationships and not always doing things, but just how do I want to be as a person, has
Mhm.
been really beneficial.
That's good.
Um, and I think that all of that contributes to health and wellness and getting well.
Absolutely. I mean, taking rest is so important, and we're in this kind of rat race sometimes, just going so fast and doing all the things, and eating on the go, and we don't realize that sometimes the best medicine is really just slowing down and being intentional. I mean, I remember Marilee telling us a story about a woman who had a client she had worked with who had for years really bad like gastrointestinal problems and other health problems, and nothing was working for her, no medications. And Marilee asked her if she would be willing to do this relaxation protocol before eating. And she's like, I don't have time for that. I'm busy, like whatever. Um, but she wasn't getting better. And so she finally decided to give it a try. And just from that, like, I think literally in like a week, she started, or less, she started noticing improvement. So she stuck with it. And after I think it was like 4 months of doing it consistently, like all of her problems were gone. It was like amazing.
I
Um,
see why we feel shocked about that. I think it
right.
makes absolute total sense. So I don't know why that still feels, I know it to be true for us. And every time I hear that, I'm like, man, that is so crazy.
I know. Right. Well, I am very grateful that you all have had that time to just be together as a family and rest and kind of soak in intentional time together, especially because you're spending so much time inside your home right now, probably. And your husband is like, and I'm sure hopefully he's getting some fresh air too. But, that's so important to just have your indoor air quality as clean as possible so that
Yeah,
you can truly rest and recover and not have to fight all these chemical exposures that are working against him every day.
absolutely. And that's some of the things too, like thinking about how, like, even if you can't implement everything at one time, opening up your windows and getting some fresh air in your house every morning, having your coffee outside on if
Right.
in the morning when it's still cool, getting some vitamin D, and then just taking out synthetic fragrance was really
That's
huge in
huge,
our experience.
huge game changer.
Yeah,
Um,
it is a game changer.
It can be hard for people because these fragrance chemicals can actually be addictive to our brains. And so sometimes it's really hard for people to give up their candles or fragrant like perfumes or detergents, etc. But man, once you do it, uh, then go back, you're then able to see how strong it is and how it makes you feel.
It's so true. And I know that, the studies, I think everybody probably knows how strong smell is to memory. I mean, it ties back to childhood experiences, to memories. It feels
Right.
nostalgic. Seasons and holidays smell a certain way. And so there's like an actual addictive quality to it, along with, there's an emotional response to it. So it
Absolutely.
is really hard, but you're absolutely right. Getting that out of your house. I remember, I think it was last year, our family took a trip and we were staying at an Airbnb, and there was a like a wall plug-in fragrance
Yeah.
in every single room, if not multiple in a room,
Um,
and synthetic candles in every room. And it like punched you in the face as soon as you walked in the door. And you better believe, like, I immediately got a headache. And the first thing I did was grab a box. I put it all in the box and just put it outside.
I love
um,
it. Yes, and open the doors. I've been there. I've done that. I actually now I get ahead of it. I try to get ahead of it by like asking, messaging the person on Airbnb, like, do you have fragrance candles and plugins or whatever? And just say, I'm really sensitive to fragrance. Um, so that I can at least have an awareness of, how strong it might be. But and shoot, hopefully find one that doesn't have that stuff in there. But I mean, it's just crazy because it even sticks to your hair and your skin and your clothes. So then when you get back home, you can still smell it.
isn't it wild?
It's crazy.
It
Uh,
is crazy.
that's another story that comes to mind from Marilee. She had stayed somewhere that had a bunch of candles and things, and then she had gotten in her infrared sauna when she got home, and she wipes down her sweat when she's in the sauna with a towel, and she said just wiping her sweat that made the towel smell like the candles. Like it was just like such a clear example of how this stuff gets in our bodies.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, it's just wild, but I'm
Crazy.
so glad that you got rid of fragrance because yeah, that's huge.
Yeah. And that's an easy one because you can immediately
Like,
find it.
yeah. And and like you said earlier, like it can be a slow process, but one way to speed up just the not necessarily the food per se, but the product side of things and lessen your exposure quickly is by not feeling like you have to replace everything at once and like you can't get rid of something until you find a safe replacement. But like things like candles or things that you don't use all the time, like pest control, bug sprays, wasp sprays, whatever, like just getting them all outside, like putting it all out and making your indoor air safer space. And like perfumes and candles and things that you're not ready to throw away or get rid of, like just putting those in a sterilite box container and storing them outside of the house, or even if you have to store them inside the house if you're in an apartment, but having them in that airtight box. I mean, just that alone, that active removal from your indoor space, like that, where it's constantly emitting
Yeah.
that chemical soup into your indoor air, is so beneficial. And that's what we really try and like our goal in our toss the toxins message is, not to let this feeling of like over being overwhelmed and feeling like you just have to throw all this stuff out that you spend a bunch of money on, and you have to spend all this money to buy new products, and you have to do all this research to find what's safe, but really just focus on like, okay, I can get a box, I can put stuff outside, like that's it
Absolutely.
starts there, because that's
Absolutely.
makes such a huge impact.
Such a huge impact. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I can't agree with you more. Like,
So
you
how
know,
has your
an easy
family
win.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was
Sorry.
just saying that's an easy win, just to get it in a box, or if you can put it outside like you were saying. And then the rest of it, be patient with yourself. Give grace to yourself because you're learning and you don't know the things that you
Yeah,
don't know.
absolutely.
And it all,
We've all been there. We all have used
yeah.
this stuff at some point or another because we didn't know, and
Hmm.
I
And
don't
even
think
for
that
myself, the want to maybe change from the sheets that I had to organic linen or whatever, anything, wanting a HEPA filter vacuum cleaner. I can't afford to replace everything at one time. That's
right,
not realistic. But whenever it's time to replace something, you've done your research and you know what the next step is, and make a wise decision for your family, what you can afford, and make a better decision. When our vacuum cleaner broke, I really wanted the Nilfisk that you guys have, like super duper wanted it.
right,
But I knew that that wasn't in our price point. So you guys gave more recommendations that were more affordable options. And that's what we chose. It wasn't like my dream, but it was a better option than what I had before. And then again, with whenever the sheets were ready to be replaced, just at that point, we got linen and
mhm,
slowly making those changes into better, those better options.
absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned sheets because that is such an easy and place to kind of focus on first is the bedroom and like the sleeping time because when we sleep,
Mhm.
that's when our body, does all it's repairing and resting, and so the more we can take a load off of the body at night when we're sleeping, the better. So we always recommend people like just start with like, yeah, you can get some organic cotton sheets at Walmart or Target, and like a t-shirt, a clean cotton t-shirt that hasn't been washed in a bunch of fragrant detergent, um, and having clean sheets like bedding and pajamas when you sleep at night. Just starting there is a great place, because it does take time to get the conventional detergent and fragrances out of your clothes. But as long as you can start with, the sooner you can start with clean stuff at night, the better.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did focus on that on the bedroom. That was an intentional effort on my part because even before Cliff was diagnosed with cancer, firefighters just don't get a lot of sleep. I
Mm,
mean, they do studies on this. Of course, their sleep patterns are interrupted so frequently at night when they're at the fire station that they're all incredibly sleep deprived. The
yeah.
quality of sleep is low.
That
Um,
alone can contribute to sickness and illness.
exactly, exactly. And so, you're not getting good sleep when you are at work because you're running calls all night and constantly being woken up and sleeping in 30-minute increments. I mean, and just being woken up 6 to 7 times a night. It's bananas. And then they come home and it affects their sleep at home. It's hard to get into a good routine whenever they're home too. So, I've seen Cliff go through seasons where um, just incredible insomnia just because the sleep patterns are so disrupted.
That's so
Um, and for a long time, when we were first married, he would take, like medicine at night to help him sleep. And
yeah,
and I think he hit a point where he's like, wow, this is really unhealthy to take this just so I get groggy enough to fall asleep.
right.
And just what can we do to help our body fall into a pattern of sleep better? What can we do to get the environment cleaned up to where it helps restore his body and heal his body and um, help that toxicity recovery faster? That was an intentional effort to
Yeah.
get the sheets clean, to get the air clean, to have a air purifier in the bedroom,
Mhm.
um, all of that.
Yeah, I'm so glad. I'm just so glad that that this was put on your heart and on your mind to do this because yeah, like I said, I have no doubt that it has benefited your family. So that's awesome that you did that. I think hopefully. even your kids one day will appreciate all the effort you've made.
Amen, sister. I hope so. And in some ways they already do. And in a lot of ways, we eat a lot of healthy food, a lot of food. Like I cook a lot, and that's a value. But my daughter made a comment the other day. She said, I just want to have snacks in my room, like normal snack food. And I'm like, well, what is normal snack food? And she's like, like Cheez-Its and like little Debbie's. And I was like, but I have food. And she goes, nobody wants to come over and eat bananas. And so it is hard, and I understand. So I want, I know I'm not an expert in the health and wellness field. And so in a lot of ways, I feel so inequipped to even be a part of the
Oh
conversation.
my goodness. No, we all are in our own way. Yeah.
But I want to be an encouragement to other people out there that it's a process, and to be patient with yourself, be patient with your people. Um, I understand not everybody's going to be on board with the decisions that are being made. And it might be really hard, and it takes time for everybody to adjust, and to be patient with yourself, be patient with your family. Um, but it's totally worth it. And stick it out, because they will jump on board eventually.
Right? I mean, I have friends now that call me or text me, ask me questions all the time because they're making changes, and they were the ones that were like thought I went completely nuts after I lived with Marilee and like started talking about all this stuff.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, they'll come around eventually probably, but or maybe not, and that's okay too. You do your thing.
Do your
But
thing.
that's what I was gonna ask earlier. What's like your extended family uh been like in terms of their response to all this, or some of, because even I mean, I'm y'all know what I preach from bridge on the bridge races. Y'all know how I live my life. So, and there are plenty of people in my immediate, you know, siblings, parents, that family level, and that don't, follow the same kind of lifestyle choices.
Yeah. Don't follow it or don't understand it.
Yeah, aren't on board, or yeah,
Is it really a problem? Are we really that at risk? Um, for the most part, my extended family has been really supportive. They don't necessarily subscribe the same way that we subscribe
right,
to
right.
it. But they don't think that we're huge weirdos. And
Like trying to like uh, bring over and offer your kids like junk food and candy all the time.
no, 100% they'll do that. No, that still absolutely happens. And that's part of the process of us learning to is how to deal with that gracefully.
Mm-hmm.
And to understand that I can't shelter my kids. I can't stop them from 100%. They're going to make choices for themselves.
Yeah.
I can't control that for them 100% of the time. Nor do I want to. I want it to be a value for them. And if it isn't a value for them, then there's nothing I can do about that.
Mm-hmm.
But I can control what happens in my house, and how we do it. And I don't even feel like we're there yet. I mean, the food thing is still a work in progress. Absolutely. Because like I said earlier, I grew up in a household where, we ate a lot of boxed foods, frozen pizzas, macaroni and cheese, frozen chicken nuggets, like all of the things. We ate a lot of fast food. And to this day, even though real food is a value of mine, I still struggle with that. Personally, I still struggle with it. I still want to stop and get a French fry, because they feed my soul. That's still really hard for me. And so I understand that it's still really hard for my kids too, because they didn't grow up. I mean, they're still growing, but when they were little, this wasn't what we did. And so we're still learning it ourselves. And so
Yeah.
I'm trying to create just space that it doesn't feel so rigid, but that we can still make better choices. It's nuanced, Kelly. It's hard. It's just really hard.
No, for sure, absolutely. And I mean, like you said, you do the best you can in your home, and that's the majority of the time that they're getting their nourishment and whatever. So, as long I always say, like for me, my kids are they're healthy, they're strong, they're not in a place of like trying to recover from illness. And if they were, I personally would be like kind of more bold or stricter or whatever, however you want to say it. Like when we're out, but I do want my kids to have the freedom to choose, um, what they want to try and see how it also makes them feel, and them also not feel like restricted, or left out or whatever. Like at the same time, I want them to be proud to be that and to know that like it's okay to be different, to like to choose healthier food, like that's okay. And that's a good thing. But yeah, just kind of having that conversation where I try really hard not to like demonize food or like make it feel like, you know,
That there's
someone's
morality
bad
to it.
for eating that or whatever, but it's more just focused on the positive of like we try and fill our bodies with what they were designed to be fueled with. And
Yeah.
this is what is our body's nourishment, to help us run and play and think better and feel better. And for me, I do notice though, when my kids have a bunch of like sugar and maybe candy with food dyes or whatever, something that they normally do not have, I do notice that it does affect their mental behavior,
Yeah.
attitude, like more easily frustrated, more easily irritable.
Yeah.
And so it's that hard part of being like, like we were talking about earlier, the marketing for like believing that you need a different cleaning product for every use. It's like there's so much marketing to kids around like this stuff, but it's like I'm trying to help you. I'm not trying to restrict you or keep you away from something that's
Yeah.
good for you. I actually want you to feel your best.
Yeah.
I'm doing this because I love you. But
Yeah.
it's just obviously so hard to navigate that when that's not the message from the world.
It's not. It's not the message that you get at the grocery store. It's not the message that you receive in advertisements or just friends, family. There's a norm out there, and you're kind of when you're trying to make different choices, man, you're pushing back on a lot. You're pushing back on a lot, and it can feel really overwhelming. And I'm saying this from a place of someone who's like in process of
Yeah.
changing this for herself and for her family. So, when I say I cook a lot here, I mean, I've been cooking. I didn't know how to cook anything when we got married. Truly did not know how to cook anything. And so I bought boxed food that you warm up in an oven for many years before I figured out how to cook anything. And so now I really enjoy the process of cooking from scratch. And, I got myself last year for my birthday a stone wheat grinder,
Oh wow.
like a wheat mill.
Yeah.
And it's electric, and you buy the wheat berries, and so I buy einkorn and spelt, and you just put it in there and it makes flour,
That's awesome.
and it's so fun.
Dude, that's like next level.
I know. But I mean, I don't expect everybody to do this. I don't. I enjoy that. So I did it for myself. And so every Saturday we make waffles. Every Saturday. It's not like we're eating,
Right.
they're still eating waffles, but I
Right.
make einkorn waffles with fresh flour and maple syrup, or, a compote if I want to make a compote with, honey and blueberries. And
Okay.
it's
I'm
delicious.
coming over to your house for breakfast on Saturday.
That is, I do take pride. We love good food. We
Yeah.
love good food in this house, and there's something communal about having your people and your friends over and having good food together and good coffee together. And so I figure if I'm going to be making food, I'm just going to make good food.
Yes, I love it. And I love what you said, because it's like I always think about that when I'm giving my kids like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches or turkey sandwiches or even mac and cheese and all this stuff, like I really don't feel like my kids are eating stuff that is so like out there and weird all the time. It's more just about like the quality,
Right.
and just
Yeah.
getting the chemicals out of the food and focusing on like good quality ingredients. But it doesn't mean you have to give up hamburgers and spaghetti and like the traditional type of meals.
Wouldn't it be sad if that were true?
Right?
I mean, like I said, I love French fries. They are a core value. But I can make them here. I mean, I still struggle with wanting to go and get French fries from McDonald's, 100%. But my mom recently gave me an air fryer.
Oh
And
yeah,
so
I want
I'm,
to get one.
oh my gosh, I love it.
Okay.
I love it. So I've been making, French fries in there. And they are so delicious. And reheating lunch in there versus, the microwave or something like that, but since I cook so much, I have a lot of fun kitchen gadgets. I have an Instant Pot, which if people aren't, I know a lot of people who have Instapots that aren't utilizing their Instapot.
That's me. I don't use it as
Really?
I need inspiration. So
Okay, so I use mine. I've used it twice today already, and we haven't even hit lunch. I made still cut oats in there this morning because I don't like to stand and over the stove and babysit that. And then I washed it out after breakfast and immediately put a whole chicken. We'll take the chicken apart, we'll throw the bones right back in, go ahead and make some bone broth in it, like in one day. I make yogurt in it, I make potatoes in it. I mean, I love my Instapot.
that is awesome. I I always do rice and like some beans sometimes, and soups. Like I'll just randomly, like if I start having vegetables and stuff that are going bad, I'll just like chop stuff up
Yeah.
and throw it all in there and be like, all right, this will be some kind of soup. Um, but I need to get more creative with it, or just and use it for like more consistently.
It is a heavy lifter in your kitchen. It will do a lot of the hard
Okay.
work for you and quickly.
Yes. Okay. You've inspired me. You say you're not an expert, but I feel that way too. I'm always like, I didn't go to like, I'm not a nutritionist. Like, we're all experts in our own way. And I've had to come to realize that, like, through the experiences that I've had with Branch Basics and opportunities I've had to share information, like on other podcasts or whatever, like in the beginning, I was like, oh my gosh, like, who am I to like be on here or to be talking to people? But you realize that just sharing basic knowledge, even if other people don't know about it and aren't aware of it, then you're helping them. I learned that so many people really just want, like what you're talking about, like the real life implementation tips of how to do this, of how to go about this and make these changes. Because we all deep down know that like being exposed to a bunch of chemicals can't be good for us. We all know like harmful chemicals, everything's a chemical, water's a chemical, but like harmful chemicals. And we all know that like eating fresh food is better for us, but it's really just talking to people that can help us like figure out how to actually do it in our day-to-day lives, and learning it from others and being inspired by others, from how they do it. So I so appreciate you sharing
Oh,
your
thank you.
experience with us today.
Thank you. I really do feel honored to be here. And, you learn things and be patient. Just be patient with yourself, be patient with your people, do the best you know how to do, keep learning, and you're going to be okay.
Mind. I think an open mind and a positive perspective makes all the difference.
Right.
I mean, if we view this as something that is super restrictive, something we have to do, it's totally different than if we walk into it with, this is an opportunity that actually can lead to more freedom for my family because we'll feel better, we'll have
Yeah.
more energy, we won't be having to go to the doctor, we won't be having to deal with this or that,
Yeah.
hard thing, sickness that pops up, whatever. And of course, obviously, like in your case with your husband, you still are, things do still come at you, but you can approach it in a totally different way. And I think having that attitude of I get to do this for my family, like I get to make better choices for them
Mhm.
that I know are going to help them. It's just so it literally it's a shift in our brain, and I say this like every time I get the opportunity to. So I'm sure people have heard me say this before, but like every thought we think creates a chemical reaction, sends a signal in our bodies that creates a physical reaction in our bodies. And so our thoughts are so powerful in our perspectives. And so just viewing it as an opportunity and having a mindset of hope instead of um, just letting ourselves be bogged down with like the fear of all the stuff that we're exposed to um, is a total game changer.
Yeah. Or even the overwhelm
Yes.
that there's so much to change. There's so have so far to go. Like, don't get stuck in that place of it all feels hopeless to make all of this change, because you're just making one choice at a time, and that's okay.
And then it becomes easier and easier. Like it becomes
Yes.
more of a lifestyle, and it doesn't. You don't even have to like put forth as much mental energy and effort towards it because it's just like what you do. So
Absolutely.
making those first steps are definitely the hardest, but it does get easier and easier.
I'm excited for your listeners, and for the people that follow you guys, because um, it is life changing. It is life changing to be on this process. I feel like it helps you physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Like, it is all so connected. It's all so connected. And so, like what I was saying, the education that you guys offer on your blog and stuff, it's bigger than cleaning products. It's so much bigger than that, because everything is holistic and it all connects together. And so, you know, what you're eating, what you're using, your technology use, your rest, your sleep, all of it is just one component. And it is, to me, I hope that doesn't feel overwhelming to people, because to me, that feels hopeful, that it's
Mhm.
doesn't all rest in one space.
Right. No, I mean, I'm so glad to hear that you like really get our mission because really the cleaning products are just a vehicle to, kind of pull people in the door and
Mhm.
have them start thinking about all these other areas. But cleaning products is an easy first step for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Um, but really, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, that's our overall big picture mission. So I love that you get that and see that and have experienced that. So again, thank you so much for sharing. And you have my email. Just feel free to reach out if you have any questions. And I might be reaching out for Instapot and baking tips. So
Yeah, yeah. Feel free to. You know where to find me.
okay, well, we will be thinking about you and your husband. And please let us know if there's anything we can do to help y'all on y'all's journey.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Thanks for all y'all are doing.
Thank you. Okay, have a great day.
Thanks, you too. Bye.